I know this is a behavior that's not going to change on any front, which is pre-ordering. Some people are immediately going to say, oh, well, we've been over this. We've been over pre-ordering for years. You know, having people learn don't ever pre-order anything. Here's the problem with that. I think a lot of people have talked down to others about pre-ordering. They've talked down to them about the idea of buying a game with your own money. And when you tell someone like, hey, don't do this with your money, or like, do this with your money, I think the human inclination is to say, hey, that's my money, F you, pal, I'm gonna do the opposite of what you just said. So I don't think the stop pre-ordering campaign has ever worked. It's never been informative enough, and it's never actually tackled the issues of why it's a problem without actually scoffing at the people who do it and saying, you're an idiot for doing it. The thing is, pre-ordering on its own can have its place. It can have its place with games like, for example, the Mega Man Battle Network collection, the remaster collection from the Game Boy Advance for the PlayStation. That was a very, very niche game that if you didn't pre-order, there weren't enough available in the United States to actually get your hands on them very easily for a while. It's something I actually talked about on my other channel, JayRPG, where we talk about role-playing games and games adjacent to role-playing games, so similar to that genre. And so there are games like that, or games like the ones offered on limited run games, where if you want a physical of the game, the only way to get it is to pre-order it because they're made in limited supply because they were digital-only games, or they're reprints of very old games for modern hardware. Those are examples, I think, of where pre-ordering makes sense, because you're not going to get the item unless you want to fork over triple the price later on, unless you do it. One of my biggest issues with pre-ordering, though, is that it has morphed over time to become more and more predatory in various ways. And that's what I want to talk about today, because it's now moved on to the very common thread of pre-order now to get this game 2 days early, or 3 days early, or a week early before everyone else in play. And that might sound great to some people. It might sound like it has all benefits, or that the people doing it are just chumps who are beta testing the game for everyone else. But the negatives and the predatory behavior of this sort of business practice far outweighs any positives. So before we get further into it, if you do enjoy today's video, you want to leave a like, subscribe for more content. I'm trying to grow these channels this next year, really trying to get back on track. It's been a rough year for YouTube, so I hope you will stick around. And also, there's going to be plenty of ways to support the channels that I will flash throughout the video, including our Fortnite code, DJAY123. So I appreciate that, and there will be some more stuff at the end of the video if you stick around. Now, this isn't something super new. I want to clarify that. Like, back when Starfield launched, and there were games doing it before that, but back when Starfield launched, you could actually play it 5 days early if you spent $100. Also, games like Payday 3 were available early, 3 days before they were actually launched. And there's a good breakdown of some of these games on Digital Trends, so I'm going to include the link in the description to that article. But I've also been looking through some upcoming games, and this is continuing to happen. Now, this was made very popular with sports games and with online service games, but it's actually permeated into a lot of other games. Now, we have the return of NCAA football, which I know a lot of my audience won't care about, but this is a big deal to a lot of people who grew up with this franchise. And of course, it has 3-day early access if you get the deluxe edition. Now, what this means, when it comes down to it, is that people pay because they're very impulsive. So there's other games coming out too doing it. Just off the top of my head, we have Dragon Ball Sparking Zero. You want to get the Ultimate Edition, you're getting 3-day early access. You get Silent Hill 2, the remake. There's a ton of different editions of this game, and this also kind of shows why gaming has gotten a little predatory with this. And this is a game that I'm actually excited to play, by the way. But something that's frustrating with it is that if you get the physical game, you only get the game. If you get the pre-order game, you get the game, you get an extra mask, or 2, I believe, actually. You get 2 on PlayStation. If you get the deluxe edition, you get more. And then if you get the deluxe edition pre-order, you actually get early access of 2 days as well. Even games like Assassin's Creed Shadows have 3-day early access if you get the gold edition or up. Now, these games also usually come with other things as well. Sometimes these are things that you can only get from pre-ordering, like pre-order bonuses. So for example, my wife Jill plays a game called Disney Dreamlight Valley, and we play that game together sometimes. There was a Founders Pack that if you got the game right away, when the game had way less content in it, by the way, you could get these items, but if you didn't get it right away, you weren't actually able to get these items at all. There was also something similar with the Demon's Souls remake, where it actually included an extra armor set, which was only in the digital version. Now look, this kind of becomes also another issue with gaming in general that doesn't just fall under pre-order, which is selling specific mementos and little shiny objects in specific versions of the game and then never letting other people get those. The reason I have a problem with that is the same reason I have a problem with early access, in that it definitely preys very obviously on the minds of people who are impulsive, who have addictive personality issues, and also who just don't want things spoiled from them or are completionists. So to run through a couple of these scenarios that I want to throw out there for you, if you're a completionist and you want every armor set in Demon's Souls, you had to pay to get the digital version. That should be unacceptable. If you are a completionist and you wanted to get these extra masks in Silent Hill 2, you have to pay for the extra version. That shouldn't really be acceptable to people, but for some reason people roll over for this and it is acceptable to them. And I don't really understand why, I guess. One big issue I have with this entire trend of getting things early or only being able to get things a certain way other than just the completionist aspect is also the aspect of not wanting something spoiled for you. This is a really bad issue, I think. I mean, it's a first world problem, but it's certainly an issue with intellectual superiority and almost a power complex thing where people will purposely try and ruin things for other people by going to them early. And I'm not kidding, that is actually genuinely a goal of some people, is to go see a game like Avengers Endgame early and spoil the character deaths for people just to make them mad. Like, it's a lot of people who don't have anything going on in their life, they don't really have any real power. So what they try and do is seize that power however they can, and like pissing people off is the best thing they have. I mean, it's often the same way with bullies. They're just crying out for attention, but in a very destructive way. But unfortunately, that destructive way with these spoilers and with purposely ruining stuff for other people is that if you have a job, if you have responsibilities, you have things going on, or money's tight, and you want to buy Assassin's Creed Shadows when it's supposed to come out, instead of getting 3 days early access, by the time you get it, there will have been people who have posted the entire game, or the ending, or the final cutscene, or all these spoilers online in random places, from orange YouTube comment sections, to Twitch chats, to YouTube comments, to Twitter, to Facebook, whatever. Those things are everywhere, and they're not against the terms of service or rules of any of those platforms. Like, it's not against the rules for me to go and tell you who Luke Skywalker's father is if I just walked out of the theater, you know, the night that Empire Strikes Back comes out, and I just start screaming it. Now I'm a douchebag, but it's not against the rules for me to be telling people that. It's just that I'm doing that very clearly on purpose to upset them. And so because of this, a lot of these companies know, because they're not stupid. I know we think companies are stupid. They're really not. They have a lot of intelligent people at these companies. It's just that they're less stupid and more predatory. But a lot of these companies know, okay, well, there's going to be a ton of people who pre-order this game to get it early because they don't want the story ruined for them, because they don't want to see the whole thing early on. They don't want to have to go on some kind of like Amish cleanse from the internet for a week in order to avoid having people ruin this thing for them. That's unfortunate, because that is very obviously predatory on the idea of FOMO, fear of missing out, and fear of missing out on that experience by having someone else ruin it for you, the same way that it's an idea of FOMO with trying to give you an exclusive mask or an exclusive armor set by having to buy the game at a certain date or with a certain edition in order to be able to get that little, what would you say, curio, or that little trinket in order to have it going forward. It's preying on the idea of missing out on something better because you decided to wait. And that's not a good thing in gaming, because something we've learned over the years is that a lot of times it is better to wait for games if you want to have the best experience with them. The same way that playing a Game of the Year edition version of a game is different than playing that game at launch. There's going to be a lot more in it, the performance is going to be optimized, bugs are going to be fixed. And so what a lot of this early access crap is doing is trying to get you to be a guinea pig for the company. That's the problem I have with it. Like, I think a lot of people have said, don't pre-order or you're an idiot. And they've really put people off to the idea of like really thinking about it when you're going to pre-order. I'm not saying never doing it. I'm saying thinking about it and saying, okay, is this something that's going to be limited in stock? Is this something I really care about? Like, for example, me, I do YouTube. So unfortunately, there have been things where if I want to get videos up on time for them, I've had to get it early because all these other YouTubers who have tons more money than I do, they're already getting that game 2 weeks to a month early from the company because they're on good terms with them and I'm not. So like there's, you know, things like that to consider. But just for people who don't do what I do, because that's just such a niche example, there is also all these other things with the fear of missing out of time, fear of missing out of these little trinkets, all this stuff. And instead of actually thinking about, okay, well, is this one really worth it? Like, is this going to be a game where it's not going to be easy to find? Or is this going to be a game where it's definitely going to be ruined for me ahead of time? It preys on this thing where people just will instinctively get it in order to avoid all of these problems altogether because it's the only way to avoid them, other than to just not care about said game. But all of the major AAA games seem to be doing this now. Now, at the end of the day, I don't think this discussion is going to change anything, and I'm not on a high horse about it. Like, if you pre-order, you're a complete idiot or anything like that. I just think people should really think about it case by case on if something is really worth it. If something is actually going to be finished at launch, if it's going to be the experience you want at launch, if something is actually going to be hard to get, maybe you want to get a physical of it, is it going to be hard to obtain that later? Because there are games like that. Look at the physical for Final Fantasy Pixel Remaster. I made a video about that on JayRPG too, where that game, if you want to get it physically, it's like you're going to pay $500 or something ridiculous on PS4 in order to get it. That's, one, shouldn't be acceptable, but two, that's an example of like, if you didn't get that game early physically, you're not getting it, unless you have a lot of money to just cough up for something trivial like that. And so I truly think these companies will take advantage of these impulses we have, or of limited time even, people who are adults who maybe they're parents now, or they have to take care of family, or they have 2 jobs, or they just have a very busy schedule, and they only have certain windows where they can game. They'll take advantage of all these life problems and desires and innate wish to feel the same thing as everyone else, to be able to experience the same special thing that other people have experienced, whether it be an armor set at the same time as them, whatever, and they'll prey on that, and they will use those psychological desires to get people to spend more money or to early access test their game in a state when it's broken or without as much content in order to deliver a better experience for other people who actually paid less, which is a very anti-consumer ideology. Take like a few people that you can prey on psychologically, make them pay more money, and then use them as a guinea pig so that the people who didn't want to pay that as much money but are in the majority will get a better experience and they won't complain, so the complaints will be niche. It's really unfortunate how this trend has gone. It went from just securing your copy of a game when it would either be harder to get or when you just wanted to be able to play it on launch day and you knew that you wanted to play it, you knew it looked good to you and you'd enjoy it, to now all these predatory practices that take advantage of so many issues with the human mind that I think we all have various degrees of, no matter who we are. If you enjoyed today's video, please be sure to leave a like and subscribe for more content. I do appreciate you. Thank you for watching. I know that this is something that's probably not going to change, but it's something that I think is important to inform people on, because instead of like yelling down at people from a high horse about it, like, I've never pre-ordered anything, you moron, I think it's important to actually look at why this practice is predatory for people. There are other ways to support this channel as well. We actually do have our own store, CosmoBunny.shop. You can use code DJAY123 for 10% off on that website. And one thing I will say is that we don't just make our stuff limited time arbitrarily. Something I think is really cool about this website is that we make different types of products. One of them is handmade resin coasters, keychains, trays, and more. What we do is we get recycled comic books, magazines, manga, other stuff that was damaged that can't be sold. My wife Jill turns them into beautiful pieces for people's homes. I think these are really awesome. A lot of them are one of a kind. We're not mass producing them. And that's not because it's like a FOMO thing. That's because it's like what we have access to. Like, we will get one of a comic that's been waterlogged and there will be 10 pages in it that are usable, and we'll turn those pages into something and create something transformative around it. So I think that's a really cool way to recycle and I guess upcycle something. and then put the rest through the actual recycling, because a lot of this stuff ends up in landfills, unfortunately. But also, we do have hand-beaded jewelry over there as well. This is all handmade, really great stuff from my wife Jill as well. All goes to help support the channel. And finally, we do have our own Fortnite code, like I said before. Now look, I'm not above any of this stuff. There's going to be games that I play that are obviously, have taken part in these practices too. I'm not trying to be a hypocrite, nor am I trying to preach at anybody. I just want people to be informed on why I find these practices predatory, and I'm not saying that I'm above falling for them at times as well. Have a fantastic day, and as always everyone, stay shui.